Today we're talking about books that shaped my childhood, and I just am gonna gush over them for a little bit. This is the list of books that just shaped my late elementary to probably like halfway through high school years and just were really formative for me. So I have a lot of nostalgic feelings about them, and they make me feel so warm and cozy. Okay, the first one that I want to talk about is actually part of a series, but it's these fairy tale retellings. This one is Violet Eyes, and it's the Princess and the Pea retelling. This one and the Jack and the Beanstalk one. I think I have it. Why don't I show you guys? That cover's so pretty. Oh, it's like buried under this giant stack. Okay. That took way too long to find. Okay, so it's the Violet Eyes one, and then this is The World Above. This is the Jack and the Beanstalk one. I think the Jack and the Beanstalk one was actually my favorite, but they're both so good. These were my favorite fairy tale retellings, and at some point I think I read every single one of them, but these two, just there was something about them that were chef's kiss. I feel like as a kid you either grew up reading Encyclopedia Brown, Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, or the Boxcar Children. For some reason my thing was the Hardy Boys. I had almost every single book that you could possibly have of these, and almost every single Nancy Drew as well. But I think just the Hardy Boys, my dad really loved them, so he already had a lot of them, and my grandpa actually gave me a like 1960s printed version of one of the Hardy Boys, and I still have it today. It's like in the place of honor on my bookshelf. But I loved these. I loved like the mystery aspect to it. It was kind of like a bit of a thriller, and I love thrillers. So yes, these, I could stay up all night reading these books, flashlight under the covers, I'm there. Okay, if you know anything about me, you know that I do not rewatch or reread probably anything. I just, once I know what's gonna happen, I for some reason cannot get into it. However, I have reread this series like 5 times in my life, and this is so embarrassing. I can't even believe I'm telling you this, but I gotta be honest, it is a fantasy romance. It's a romantasy series, which I know I bash on, but growing up, this was like my series. It's the Tiger's Curse series. Let me know if you ever heard of this or read it. I don't even know if it was popular at all, but it's about this girl named Kelsey who works at a circus one summer, and she meets this tiger who is actually an Indian prince, and then she goes to India to break this curse that is on him and his brother, and it is like every single trope that you could probably think about, which is, like I said, so embarrassing. But I don't know. I think it's just the action, adventure, and fantasy elements that I always loved anything magical, as you probably will be able to tell. So these books were just, these were my Roman Empire. Okay, next up we're shockingly going with a historical fiction, but of course it has a magical element to it. It's about this guy named Nick, and he is living on the cusp of World War II, but he also finds this like time machine, and he goes back in time, so he's like in the pirate era, but he's also in World War II era, so it's got some really fun time jumping. And my brother and I loved this book. This was like the book that we read together, and when I found this in a used bookstore a couple years ago, he was the first person I texted. Little Women was actually a huge piece of my reading when I was younger. I think I read through this twice, maybe from ages like 12, 13 to 16. And there was a time where I was very obsessed with the Broadway musical. So I would just listen to the songs and cry, obviously. I think this book did such a great job of having these different stages of life, and also helped me to recognize the passage of time as a really beautiful and fleeting thing. So I appreciate this book for that. If there's one book that I ever recommend to someone looking to get into middle grade as a genre, I recommend them The Mysterious Benedict Society. This is obviously not the first book. I loaned it out and it never got returned, sadly. But the TV show on Disney Plus did not do this book justice. It is so well written, and every single chapter is just so jam-packed with action and adventure and witty, humorous language. I feel like this would not feel like a middle grade book. You wouldn't feel like you're reading down grade levels. It feels like you're reading something that is meant for everyone, and that's why I love it so much. And I think the messaging in it is actually really interesting because it's about these kids that go and try to stop this bad guy who's sending messages through the radio, and it's like these terrible messages that you can't actually hear with your own ears, but it's kind of below the decibel of our consciousness, but it's also seeping into our consciousness. That doesn't make sense. It's below what we hear, but it's something that still goes into people's minds. That is such a terrible explanation, but there you go. That's the explanation. It's just a really interesting book, and I think has a lot to say about society in something that is meant for children who are growing and shaping their critical thinking. So I think it teaches them to not take everything they hear at face value, which is a great lesson. I want to talk really quick about the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, because it is fun and whimsical, but also freaking terrifying to a child. I read this and thought I was gonna get snatched out of my bed by giants. So thanks, Roald Dahl. This is one of those books that I read, and then after reading it, felt like I could vividly see the things that happened in the book in my mind's eye. It wasn't like words on a page. It was, I was there, I was immersed. And like I said, I was slightly terrified, but it's okay because it was worth it. Last but not least, the one, the only, C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. I have the whole box set here, except number 2 is taken out for another video. But the Chronicles of Narnia has a very special place in my heart because this was one that I read with my mom. She read this book series to us as we were kids going to bed. And I also had the pure joy of being Lucy in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in a play that my church was putting on. And that was like one of my fondest memories from my childhood. I just loved it so much. I felt like I was her, and I lived in Narnia every single day because that's just how magical the experience was for me and how much I internalized that role. But I love C.S. Lewis because his theology just grows as you grow. The books grow with you. They don't just start and end as fairy tales. They start as fairy tales and they end as a deep theological metaphor, and it's so beautiful. And on that note, I think that I will end you with this quote from C.S. Lewis in the dedication of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which says, "But someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again." And I hope that you will never be too old to keep reading fairy tales. All right, I'll see you next time.